Hello, welcome back, Book Bar. It has been a sec.
I don't know why this is weird. That's weird.
We have been gone for the holidays.
Yes.
And now we're back in full force. It's 2021.
It is.
Today's an exciting day. What's happening today?
We are talking with author of Dimension Y.
A hilarious middle grade book.
Yes. And literary agent John Cusick. And it's going to be a fun one.
Ooh.
So let's play his trailer and then get to it. Yay!
Welcome. We tend to rock to that song a little too much.
That is the most I've ever been introduced. That is the most extra introduction I've ever received. And I love it so much.
We try.
We definitely try to be as extra as possible.
So we have an interviewer, guest interviewer with us today.
Teddy.
Teddy.
You only asked one.
Hello, Teddy.
And Teddy is a character in your book, Dimension Y.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have so many questions.
There's so many questions.
So many. Whenever I start reading a book, I read two things first. I read the dedication and the acknowledgments. And I saw that you wrote this for your wife.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I was reading it, I even texted Sarah. I said, I feel like there are so many inside jokes in this book. And I'm going to ask you.
Yes.
Yes.
So why don't you start by telling us where the inspiration came from?
So this was really when my wife and I first were dating. I started working on this book sort of as a way to make her laugh. And it would be, usually I would write a chapter in the morning and then later I would read it to her out loud. So it was almost written as an audiobook. It was always in my head as something to say out loud. So I think in terms of inside jokes or whatnot, it's basically just my best impersonation of her sense of humor kind of mapped into a sci-fi story. So, you know, the Mr. Jeremy and the Jeremys, who are all bog mutants and work various menial jobs throughout the universe. I think they exist because I wanted the first character that Lola, one of the main characters, meets in the book, to have a silly voice. And so still to this day, my wife and I will say, hello, like when we feel like referencing to Jeremy.
That's how I heard him.
Yeah, very, very earnest, like, you know, sometimes you get to die, you know, like it's very, and of course, I think the big inside joke, though not that inside, if you follow me on Instagram or whatnot, is that one of the other characters, Professor Donut, is modeled after our cat, Donut, who is very large and orange, much less friendly and gracious than the Professor Donut.
Very dapper and dainty.
I did try to find, this is the only cat in a suit I could find, but I did try.
I appreciate it.
So it's a meow stash.
Yeah, meow stash.
Yeah.
So why the baked beans?
Yeah.
Out of all the
I think, you know, when I was a little kid, one of the first stories I wrote in grade school for like a school assignment was about the planet of Barbecuia, and all the creatures who lived on Barbecuia looked like big hot dogs with like buns for, you know, coats and whatnot. And it was just silliness. And so I think that something about that kind of held over to appear in this book. But also, I really wanted the Fog Company to have a really silly name. And the Fog Bolus Hypergate and Baked Beans Corporation just sounded like an unusual pairing of
it's the
focuses.
perfect
Yeah.
one. You chose well.
As I was reading it, I was like, well, yeah, of course that would happen. I mean, like, why wouldn't it? Like, why would
it made sense.
The next thing that happens, I mean, like, yeah, of course she would find that. I mean, why wouldn't she? That's just how this world works. It was so funny.
And as I was growing up, my mom was a big like Star Trek and Doctor Who, and the kill robots reminded me so much of the was it the Dalek robots? Yeah, they had all the
sure.
What I'm talking about? Am I the only one?
Yeah, I do. The Daleks with the eye stalk and
scary.
whatnot.
They killed everybody. They were horrible mutants inside of machines. But that's exactly what it reminded me of. So it's a bit nostalgic for me. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Someone pointed out to me recently that there really aren't any robot characters in the book, apart from sort of functionaries. There's a messenger robot and there's that kill robot and whatnot. And I don't know how that happened. Maybe it is like a Doctor Who thing. Like, I just didn't want there to be any cute robotic dogs to annoy people, But,
no, it was what is it? What's the security system dude's name? It starts with a B.
Bucky.
Bucky, who like constantly, howdy, partner.
Which is funny because we have a huge chain down here called Bucky's.
Yeah.
And it's it's huge though. It's like Texas's thing. So every time I read it, I was like, I think he's been here. And
he went to Bucky.
Maybe not.
No, but I wanted to I didn't know if the song Bucky was singing was legit at the end. So I was like, oh my gosh, if I could find this song. And then she's like, why don't you try and sing it? I'm like, I don't even know how this goes. It's 16 verses or something. I'm like, it was hilarious. But he's all like,
oh yeah. There's definitely.
Go ahead.
There's definitely a melody to it. Yeah, I think, but I can't recall it off the top of my head. But Molly and I used to sing that as well. Black Hole Ain't No Place for a Cowboy. I think there's something about when he turns your best friend Eddie into super string spaghetti.
Yeah,
it's a little bit coming around the mountain when she comes.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. If I knew the theme, then I'd be like,
well, now we can do it.
I know. Now I'll just start, reading all that. But yeah, no, it is hilarious, and there
very well written
is a second, yes. Yeah,
that's right. So I've just turned in the final draft of the second book, Dimension Y: Revenge of the Sequel, that I'm super duper excited about. It's really fun to go kind of back around with these characters again and kind of a whole new series of gags. Some of the characters return. Finn and Lola, of course, are there. Professor Donut plays a bigger role in this sequel. But yeah, it was lots and lots of fun.
Live in the pocket of a onesie. That was.
That's right. Yeah.
And where did we get the onesie idea from?
I think I'm a big fan of puns and silly word jokes. I mean, that might be considered dad jokes if I had kids. And I think that something about there is, such a thing as a pocket universe or a bubble universe. And I thought, well, pocket should be in the pocket of what is the most lovely thing to, spend the rest of your life in, probably a comfy onesie, really. So why not?
Mm-hmm.
And I do want to visit the ball pit on the moon. I do want to go.
Yeah, on Luna.
Because that would be fun.
I like that it was not a whole bunch. It's not the moon.
The moon. It's several moons.
Several moons.
Own
It's
it.
not the moon.
It's very clever. In my daytime job, I'm a teacher for middle grade, and so I did have my advanced kids read it over the holiday break, and they were super loving me, making them read a book. Yeah, God forbid. So,
a good one,
But it turned out to be the best thing for them because last week we had our annual spelling bee, and lo and behold, for a challenge word was bulbous. And that is who described Mr. Bolus, Goro Bolus.
And a bulbous face.
Yeah, this one kid was sweating bullets, and he was kind of struggling the last couple words, and then they said bulbous. And he just kind of sat in this grin. He just stood up with all confidence. And they're like, do you want us to use it in a sentence? No, ma'am. So thank you for that. You saved
Yeah.
spelling bee for one child.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
Okay.
Put that one on your resume, you know?
I know.
I know. I like
I
that.
saved it.
I saved a child.
Saved him.
So I do have a question. So your first two books were YA, and then this one is for middle grade, but I would say YA would want to read it too.
Higher, yeah,
but
higher.
But what? I mean, what
Why
made
the
you want?
switch?
Yeah, why the switch?
I think that the Dimension Y is probably closer to how do I put this into words? I think it's more me in a way. I used to work at a radio station when I was in college, and my friends and I had a live radio drama company. And frequently during the week, there would be time, I would maybe have an hour to write the radio drama, like immediately before we went on. And I would run into the next room and just give it to everybody, like read it over once and then we're live. And the goal was always just to make them laugh, you know, because we can't hear the radio audience. So if I'm making my friends laugh, then it's going to work. And that was so much the spirit of writing this book. If I could make Molly, my wife, laugh, then it was good enough. And that kind of freedom and playfulness is something I thought I could get away with more in a story for younger kids. And I think that's kind of, you know, they say with kid lit writers, you write for the age group that you kind of stopped maturing at. And that's, I think, like 10-year-old John is pretty much still running the show. So, you know, I think that's probably why the switch happened for me. And, you know, my YA books, Girl Parts and Cherry Money Baby, I love them. I'm really passionate about them. But also, I think when I started writing them, I was closer to having been a teenager, not quite so long before. And it just felt like a better place to get my start. But with kind of my legs under me as a writer, I felt confident enough to kind of try out the middle grade space. And I really, really like it. Now, having finished the sequel and whatnot, the next thing I write, if I'm fortunate enough to be able to do more, you know, I definitely want to stay in the middle grade space, at least for now.
Mm-hmm. Well, my middle graders loved it, so just so you know.
Thank you. Oh, that's great.
They really did. They really did. Especially the boys. They just, I don't know, sci-fi and having like one of the main characters be, you know, around their age. And they always want to read up. They're in 5th grade. Mm-hmm. So your character being like 12, you know, they don't want to read 10. That's just baby stuff, Miss T. So they want to read up. And so being able to do that, they really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah, the vocabulary too.
Yeah,
all that kind of
so
stuff.
vivid.
Yeah.
So, you know, and we listened to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and I also listened to your audiobook. I don't know if it was the same guy, but they both had a British accent, and so I just felt like I was listening to a little bit of Roald Dahl. You know, it's a little mixture of John Cusick, you know, doing a little bit of Charlie. It was just, it was nice. The same. Yeah, it was amazing. The guy with the British accent really brought it home. He did a good job. I mean, I so clearly wish I was British. Like just reading this book, you could probably tell. And I think the fact that they got a guy with an English accent to do the audiobook, it made me so happy. It just furthers my fantasy of being Douglas Adams, you know. So it made my drives in the morning so much fun.
That's so fun. I didn't listen to that.
Yeah,
I had my voices in my head, but
yeah,
but, you know, that's so much fun.
Go ahead.
So, okay, so we kind of talked about I'm like, I have so many questions, but I didn't write them in order. So, you know, being an agent and a writer, is that hard? I mean, yeah. I feel like, you know,
where do you find the time?
We're writers and just humans. I'm a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like a writer and a mom, and I feel like I don't have enough time in the day. So how do you take... And I also get very connected to like the work that I'm doing, and I don't want to separate from those characters because they speak in my head. So like, how do you give your attention to a book and like knowing those characters and what's happening, and then like switch gears? I mean, obviously your job's as a literary agent, so you probably can do this, but switch gears to like somebody else's characters and helping with that process.
Well, I'd say that the process for me has really evolved over the years. When I started writing novels, my agenting career was just beginning, and I had a lot more free time. And I wrote these books during a different part of my agenting career, so it's always a little bit different kind of book to book. But that said, I think you kind of hit upon it. Is that it's not so much the hours in the day, because for me, I'll usually write for an hour, 90 minutes in the morning before work. Maybe 6 days a week when I'm really cooking on something, which isn't, they aren't very big sessions, but I'll get to a full draft, slowly. It's not so much finding the time during the day, but the mental space, because like you say, when you're writing a book, those characters start to take up your background static all day long.
Mm-hmm.
And, you're always kind of half thinking about it and whatnot. And so I think that that is the trickiest part is being able to like turn that volume knob down when you're focusing on your day job. For me, agenting is also a vocation. I mean, it's something I'm very passionate about. It feels like a very good fit for me and who I am. And so that's always kind of like the number one thing that I'm working on and focusing on. So noveling, writing is always something that's kind of a side hustle, or better to say a labor of love. You know what I mean? Like a personal passion that's sort of separate from the rest of it. But that said, I'm lucky because my, agenting dovetails really nicely with writing, because even if I'm not thinking about my book, I'm thinking about books all day long, and I'm editing constantly, thinking about story structure, what works, what doesn't, what kind of rules can you bend and which ones can you break, and all that stuff. So they help one another out. Definitely being a writer helps me be a better agent, and vice versa, I think,
Yeah.
So do you think you'll stay in the science fiction realm, or do you think you'll branch out a little bit to other areas as well?
So I'll say that in addition to Douglas Adams, one of my other favorite writers was a much less well-known author named Robert Asprin. And he did a series of books that you'd probably find in the just fantasy and science fiction section. I don't think that you would have put them in the kids section back in the day. But they were all puns on the word myth. So it'd be like mything in action, or,
Nice.
mistaken identities or whatnot. And they were so fun, just like silly, like fantasy genre, but similarly goofy. And so that's what I would really like to do next. And I'm starting to tinker around with. It's something that is probably similar in tone and approach to Dimension Y, but maybe in a more, a universe that's built around magic and monsters and that kind of stuff.
Right. Well, you kind of did that with like the games and stuff, like they were playing like Connect 4
4
million.
And then Candy.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh. First,
I mean, such super creative name. I mean, where did you come up with, besides, I guess, just 10-year-old John, all of the different names for all of the different things? I can only imagine what your wall looked like, just posters of like drawings and what. Oh, and speaking of, my kids do want to know if you are going to make this or think about it. They want to ask you if you will make it into a graphic novel.
Oh, wow. I would love that. I think that would be so much fun to see this as a graphic novel, or maybe a like side adventure of theirs, something that's like you get a new story, but in a graphic novel format. That would be fun. As far as where the names came from and whatnot, I'm not sure. It's almost like this is a very RLAU kind of book for me. Like, again, like I read it out loud as I was writing it. So everything kind of came from what sounds funny to say, out loud. And if you have a character that is, very, very pompous and high status, you give him something that sounds very complex, like it would come out of a, classic sci-fi novel, and if you have a character that you're supposed to, think of as sort of silly and unthreatening, you give him a slightly more ridiculous name as the author or whatnot. Goro Bolas was a fun character to name.
I love the conversation with like
through the Scrabble things out.
Well, you're talking about, so I was talking, in my mind, I thought you meant, what is it? Gertie or Gert, the only female
Greta.
Greta. There it
Right?
is.
Mhm.
And I loved her conversation with her father. That cracked me up. But yeah, sorry that.
Sidebar.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just kind
Well,
of
I love the idea of people being born into just absurd situations, and like poor Greta being the only female bog mutant, but also in addition the only like halfway smart one. Like I imagine that she is just constantly grinding her teeth,
right.
at all times, just like trying to be a professional.
Right.
I will say Greta comes back she comes back in a big way in the sequel, and I was excited to spend some more time with her. She's a fun character to write.
And the little mushrooms. I almost wanted to do the interview just doing moops and meeps and boops.
I scoured the internet looking for a mushroom because I wanted to put a little tool belt and some steel-toed boots on him and send him to you. It is, when you need to find something, you can't. There's no mushroom.
I wish I had it to hand. My client, as a Christmas present, illustrated some of the mushrooms with the different style heads and whatnot, and sent it to me. It's on the other side of the apartment, or I'd go and grab it for you guys.
So
but
it was just so clever. The little steel toe.
Wait, hold on. My wife has just thrown it.
Oh, there they are.
That's so funny. Look at this one.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
And since I'm also an agent, I'm going to plug this author, Jules Machias. Their debut middle grade book is called Both Can Be True, and you should Google it. And
I think I looked
it's a beautiful middle grade novel that I highly recommend. But yeah, the Bertram and Friends.
Both Can Be True.
I was like, that's not Lucera's drawings. I could recognize it.
I'm thinking that might be a spring break read.
There you go.
But yeah, I looked at all your clients and their books. Last night I was looking through them, and I'm like, oh, these different, the different illustrators and like their examples of their pictures and stuff. And
so
I was just like,
speaking of, Dumplin is a love. love. And you got to go to the premiere, right? My biggest question is, did you meet Jennifer Aniston?
I did. Yeah, I did. I am the celebrity meetings are almost completely wasted on me. But she was really, really cool. I got to sort of like hover around Dolly Parton. I didn't really get to meet her, but I was sort of like in her. I was like in her halo.
I would be geeking out. I don't think that words.
I would just start singing.
I'd pass out. I'd pass out.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I've always wanted to go to Dollywood.
I do want to do that, and I would love like a book to be one of the ones that she distributes.
Right?
Like,
congratulations on that. I mean, when that she has a prior book, I guess, before Dumplin, that author.
Did she? I thought Dumplin was her first.
Mm-mm.
Oh,
Dumplin was not her first, and in fact, interestingly, her first book, Side Effects May Vary, is how my wife and I met. We were both agents at the time. We both offered on it, and Julie went with my wife. Yeah, and so years went by. And I just knew Molly Jaffa at the time as this, like, who is this young upstart agent who scooped this client for me. And later on, we started working at the same agency.
Do agents know if you pass, like, who they go to? Like,
Oh, sure. Well, just in the sense of, like, they don't have to tell you in the moment, but later on when Side Effects sold, there's a deal announcement, and I would say, like, oh, it was that Molly. Yeah. In 10 years, I'm going to seduce her and marry her, and then when she leaves agenting, I'll inherit Julie Murphy, and my long con will be complete.
Right?
Look at that. That's a winner. Story.
You did it.
Yes, right.
Oh my God.
So yeah,
so
but
she wrote Dumpling with under you as her agent, or
how did that work?
No, Dumplin was with Molly, and the movie came out just a little bit after Molly left. So it was Molly and I and Julie's book to film agent Dana Spector, who were all sort of there at the premiere together, and that was super fun. And and now the the third book is coming out in that series, the third and final, called Pumpkin, which is really, really delightful. We were just talking with Julie's publisher yesterday about sort of what upcoming events she's going to be doing for Pumpkin, and they're going to be incredibly fun. So yeah, I'm excited about that too.
We'll be looking out for that.
So like, what's your role in that? I mean, like, getting to go to the premiere, is that typical for like agents, with books that, become movies, or is that just kind of because you're cool?
I would. I don't care. I don't, even if it wasn't my book, I'd go.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if your book gets turned into a movie and there's any kind of premiere, you get to go. I think we were lucky that this one, opened at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood and was really a big event and whatnot. And we were fortunate enough to be able to go out there and do it. So that was super exciting. There were a couple of different instances where Julie got to hang out on the set. And her editor and I were invited to go down and participate. Unfortunately, I didn't get to do that, but yeah, so it's fun. But it is like, as the literary agent, it's out of your hands at that point, really. It's the movie people are making their movie and whatnot, but they were really great, kept Julie very involved. She's got a cameo in the movie with her husband Ian.
I was looking at her, I was like, I swear she looks familiar, but yeah, that's right.
So, speaking of authors and whatnot, I mean, who are some authors that have inspired you or do inspire you, or who are you reading right now? Who are your faves?
Sure. Well, so I am really late to the party, but I just this winter been reading Madeline Miller, so Circe and Song of Achilles, which are absolutely amazing. In terms of writers who inspired me growing up, Bruce Coville and Louis Sachar are two. I think as middle grade authors kind of writing adventures with boy protagonists, I think my mom saw those on the shelf and immediately were like, oh, this is for my kid. But Wayside School is Falling Down, that series of books, which are, even looking back as an adult, so weird. I still don't know what is going on in that school. It's like a sort of Lovecraftian building that is bigger on the inside. Like, it's so odd. But I loved those books, and they were so funny. I still think about, there's a story in one of them, like Wayside School is Falling Down, where every kid in class gets an ice cream flavor that's supposed to represent them. So, like, if someone is a nasty person, like, the ice cream tastes terrible. And if it's someone that everybody likes, it tastes really good.
Where you
Yeah. Yeah. And then, but you can't taste your own ice cream. Your own ice cream doesn't taste like anything. And I'm like, what an existential, weird. Yeah. So I don't think you could get away with something that odd these days. But those were definitely authors who, apart from the obvious people like Douglas Adams and whatnot, and Terry Pratchett, who were really big inspirations for me as a writer and a reader growing up too.
Huh. That's awesome. So kind of shifting gears into agenting questions.
We have quite a few write-ins.
Yeah. So, I mean, you kind of touched on it, but did you always want to be a literary agent, or did you was it I want to be a writer and then literary agent fit, or how? Because I saw you got a degree. What was it, in Russian literature or something like that? Was that it, or it was something?
I was an English major with a double major in Russian literature.
That's it. Because you said in your bio that your professor was
Russian literature.
This isn't a career or something.
This is fun but useless. Yeah. And which would have been fine. It turns out I ended up using it in a way, but I think when I was in college, one of my student jobs was a permissions assistant, is what it's called, for our independent press on campus, which mostly published poetry and whatnot. And that was my first introduction to sort of the back office, the business of publishing. And it was fun. It was interesting. So I think that I knew when I got out of school that publishing could be a job that would suit me. But really, I didn't know what an agent was or what role they played. I think editor was really the only thing I was aware of or kind of interviewed for when I got to New York. And it just so happened I happened to get a job assisting a literary agent, like a personal assistant. Like I walked his dog and like got the laundry and the coffee. It was very like Devil Wears Prada.
Right?
Like,
yeah, I was like, nice,
you know?
Miranda.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And, you know, it was working with him, I kind of realized, hey, this is a really cool corner of the business to be in, not just agenting, but kids' books specifically, really suited me and my personality. So, yeah, I just kind of stuck with it, and it became something that sort of subsumed my novelistic aspirations at a certain point, which is great. The thing is, like, I really like writing other people's books. I don't know that I love the idea. This is going to sound sort of funny, but I don't know if I love the idea of being a famous writer. Not like anyone's asked me to be, by the way. It's like, oh no, I'm sorry.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Nah.
Yeah.
Not today.
But I think it's like I'm a behind the scenes kind of creature in a way. So so this blend of agenting and then getting to write occasionally and getting to do stuff like this is like just this is perfect for me. You know.
Yeah.
Well, we want to promote your YouTube channel as well, which is Agent Brain, Writer Brain. Or is it Writer Brain, Agent Brain? Agent Brain, Writer Brain?
It's Agent Brain, Writer Brain. Yeah.
And on there, you've got some tips for, you know, all us authors of the world. So
very helpful.
Very, thank you. We've already started writing.
Yeah. So, like, I am typically, when I'm talking to my clients or critiquing writing for conferences or whatnot, I would find myself using these phrases like, all right, well, you know, I'm putting on my agent hat now, or I'm using my agent brain versus my writer brain. And really what I think of when I think of those two concepts is, you know, your writer brain is exactly what you think it is. It's the creative brain. It's the one that's bursting with imagination. It's also the self-conscious brain and the neurotic artist in all of us and whatnot. And it's the first part of you that does it for the sake of creating, right, and making something fun. And I think the agent brain is sort of the what takes that creativity and reins it in and might say, okay, well, this is great, but here's how it might be more applicable to the market, or, you know, this is better timing for this kind of story now than later, or vice versa. So sometimes when I'm, you know, critiquing some writing, I'll say, this is an agent comment only, or this is a market comment. So there's nothing wrong with this creatively, but because of the business, you might think about doing X, you know? So I think out of those two ways of thinking, combining them, that's where that name for that YouTube channel came from. And that's kind of what I try to bring to those little talks when we make them is you know, a little bit of the creative side, a little bit of the market side, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were helpful, very helpful. You think you watched what, times each?
Yeah, writing in scenes and things like that.
So what are some of the, we have some people that wrote a question. And one of them was, what's the biggest mistake that you see kind of over and over in repetition on a query letter? So we can tell people to stop doing it.
I think the fun answer that I think most people aren't going to make this mistake as much anymore is writing in the voice of your main character. So I will see, awesome. You know, queries from like, like,
hello, my
oh yeah.
Oh wow. Okay, go on.
Oh yeah. It's typically like for much younger stuff, it'll be like, hey, my name's Rodney the Rhino, and like, have you ever wondered what it's like to be the only rhino in, you know, Chicken City? And you know,
I have.
Like that idea might be great, but a query letter should really be it's a professional bit of correspondence between you and an agent, right? So that's usually a no-no. I think that the less fun answer that's actually probably more common is not getting specific enough. I think that there's this idea that your query should sort of be like on the back of your book. And it really, that's a little bit too coy. You know, sometimes people will say like, and then she discovers a secret which will change the way she lives the rest of her life. And I'm like, okay, that would be good for the back of the book. But for a query letter, as your potential agent, I need to know, what is that secret? And what ways does it change her life, practically speaking? Like, does that all make sense in your book? And is that interesting and whatnot? So I think that's, a lack of specificity can sometimes trip folks up as well.
Gotcha. How many queries do you receive in one day?
Oh, you don't want to know.
Ooh, let's play a guessing game.
Ooh.
So I just did a big purging of my email system. And I just tweeted about this the other day. I think in 5 years at Folio, I've received close to 20,000 queries, I think it was. It's doing the math, it breaks down to about between 10 and 15 queries a day, 7 days a week.
Okay.
I mean,
which is a lot.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a ton. So don't get us wrong. We get it when there's like next,
Yeah.
next.
And yours, and
Yeah.
is it full? I don't know if it's folio across the board, but I know yours says, if you don't hear from anybody or if you don't hear from me in 30 days, then it's a pass. Is that across the board, or do some agents like
for folio?
Yeah, for folio. That's what I mean.
No, so each of us has individual query guidelines. So if you submit to Emily Van Beek or Rachel Ekstrom or Aaron Harris or one of the other agents at Folio, it might be a different setup. I would say, that was like when I moved over to Folio, that was a big change that I made. I went from responding to every query to kind of doing that understandably onerous thing of not responding if you're not interested. But I just realized that it would just be way too time consuming, to respond individually. I think the other thing too is that when you send individual responses, maybe 1 in 5 will be like met with some kind of snarky comeback. You know what I mean? And
People
once you get enough
respond
of those, you're like, okay,
I've read,
oh my
yeah,
gosh,
I have read this. They respond back
all the time.
I guess
All
if
the
you
time.
use email, I feel like Query Manager, there's not a way to. I mean, I guess you could really search them out.
Yeah,
but
people
I mean,
do. They get crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I'll go ahead and say that it's almost always the guys. Women don't do this. It's only men who are like, well, you'll be sorry when,
we're so
You
used
just missed out on a
we're so used to
blockbuster,
rejection. We're
Mister.
we're
So
like,
speaking of that, is there ever a book that you passed on that just became huge and you were like, I'm sorry, did I take
you
your
took
question?
you took the play a game question. That's okay. That's all right. Yes,
I'll
continue.
fill it in.
Continue.
Was there ever something that just was huge and you were like, oh, I missed that one?
I can honestly say there's never been something that I've passed on that went on to be like a mega hit. There's definitely things that I've passed on that went on to sell, and I think that's just part of the thing where you can't represent them.
Subjective, right?
Subjective.
Absolutely. No, it is. And, the other thing, too, is that, like, I'm not the perfect agent for every book that comes across my desk. You know what I mean? There are different people who are better fits. I will say there are books that I offered on and didn't get, and I'm still not over it. And I'll, shout it to anybody who asks, I will say, they both sold. Oh, man. Yeah, well, yes, separately. Yeah, but Caraval by Stephanie Garber and The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert are 2 books. They both sold to Flatiron Books, Sarah Barley, and those both broke my heart because I love those books so much, and I still pine for them. But what are you gonna do? So yeah.
Wow.
Hazelwood's a good one. I love that one. It is good.
So out of your, what you said, 10 to 15, roughly that you get a day, how many fulls would you say you relatively request, like per week? I mean, I guess.
Yeah, I would say probably 1 in 10, maybe on average. It depends. Sometimes you get what I call query goggles. Where you've read so many that, that are passes that one will kind of jump out to you as like, oh, this is like, this person queried me in the right genre and not, as their rhinoceros character. Right, exactly. So that can happen. I mean, this is the thing. Whenever people hear how many queries that agents get, they understand the kind of bulk at the level of competition. But the truth of it is, like, if you're watching this video, if you are put any effort at all into thinking about your query or your genre or whatnot, you are so far ahead of 99% of the people who send out queries. And I think it's because this day and age, it's so easy to send out an email. Anyone can do it at any time without really doing their research or whatnot. So a lot of them are easy passes because the queriers haven't really put any or enough effort into what they're trying to do. But yeah, I would say it's about 1 in 10 might be a full manuscript request. And then, in terms of bringing on new clients, if I bring on 5 clients in a year, that's probably a pretty heavy year. But I'm always actively looking is the other thing. My query box, apart from like very brief stints, usually in December, is always open. And I'm always looking to bring on and work with new talent. And then the other thing too is that as an agent, you have authors who sort of stop writing or you kind of lose touch with. They're not really as active as they used to be. Older authors pass away, to be frank, and also, you part ways with writers. And so there is always kind of it's not that your list just gets ever longer. It's always kind of hovering around a particular size, I've found.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's what I was wondering, like the size. I looked, you have about, 31 clients right now? At least that's what I think I counted on the website.
That's probably a pretty good estimation in terms of like active clients. I think if you were to look on my internal records, it's probably closer to 50. Oh. But some of those are people who I share with other agents at Folio. Oh. Some of those are people who haven't had their debut sold yet, so they might not be on the Folio website yet. But that's but it depends because it could be 40 this time next year. So it hovers around.
I feel like that would be challenging to have like a large list, especially because you say that you're kind of an editorial agent. So I feel like you would be much more involved in the process than like some other agents that are just like their list is long. They've got lots of people, but they just send you off to an editor, and kind of they just do the process of selling your book and not being as involved. So
I think what becomes your most precious resource is the time that you have to put in to each project with each author. And I think as a result, the bigger your list gets, by the same token, the more selective you have to become as an agent. And that means not just the project itself, but the writer that you're working with. Is this someone who is going to bring me, pretty clean and focused drafts, and can they work hard? Are they flexible? Can they pivot when they need to? These are qualities that I look for in a writer because, as an agent, when I'm trying to teach my interns, like, how much do you edit as an agent? What kind of editing do you take on, and what do you need to leave to the editor or what have you? One thing I always say is that we're not writing teachers. I love to teach, and that's why I do the YouTube channel and whatnot. But your agent, once you have them, is not your writing coach or writing teacher. Really, they're there to help you kind of straighten your tie and make sure your hair is slicked back and push you out into the world. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I think it's about working with people who are at the level where that kind of help is going to push them right over the edge, and someone who needs kind of more hand-holding, is maybe either not quite ready for representation or needs an agent that has a little bit, a slightly smaller list, and so more time to kind of do more run-up, more development, et cetera.
So, sorry.
Go ahead.
All these questions. So, like, how would you determine that about somebody? I mean, yes, you see their work and you ask for their full, and you can read the manuscript and you can see that it's, like, let's say it's done well and all that kind of stuff. But maybe how would you know that about the writer themselves, that they're moldable and flexible and stuff. I mean, is there more in a query that you're wanting as far as like a bio? But I mean, I feel like anyone could write anything. Like, I'll change everything that you want me to. Just sign me, you know?
Sure. Yeah. I think there's a lot of little places that you draw that information from. So it could be something as simple as like the line level writing can tell you something about how much work or polish someone has put into their work. Like, for instance, speaking of like the agent brain, writer brain thing, there are oftentimes little line level mistakes or errors that aren't necessarily creatively unforgivable, but they're the kind of things that people move past once they've like done a lot of critiques or spoken to people in the business, you know, so they're almost like little codes that kind of tell you. And so to give an example, because I'm sure, you know, listeners will want to know. Yeah, right. Here's the inside info. So things like this might be, you know, don't open, like if you're opening your story with the characters, beginning of the character's day. So like I got up, I went to the mirror and I like pulled a hand through my dusty blonde hair that never stays down or whatnot. Those are things that they're not necessarily bad writing, but they're just very familiar cliches. And they're the kinds of cliches that get talked about in conferences and whatnot. You know, like dialogue attributions
waking up
that use
dream.
Right, no dreams.
Yeah, exactly.
I think running,
you know, like that kind of stuff.
That sort of thing.
Like there are little things that you just can start to catch in your own writing. But beyond that, I would say, you know, I've had phone calls where I've been interested in a manuscript, but I thought it needed work. And I've called up, you know, an author and talked to them about my ideas, and immediately on the phone, I can feel that they are they're jiving with what I'm saying. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, that's really interesting. You know, and this is why I did it like that. But actually, you know, what if I did it like this? And like, couldn't that kind of, and, you know, we're already collaborating and they have ideas about how to revise. You know, I've had another conversation with an author where I was interested in the project. I did still think it needed work. I shared my feedback, which they were very open to, you know, but they kind of, their attitude was one of, you know, thank you for this. I really don't know how to improve it. It's kind of as good as I can get it. And that conversation didn't end with me offering representation, because I just thought, well, that's okay. But like, I can't pull you up the mountain. You know what I mean? You got to kind of, I can point in the right direction, but then you got to be excited to run up yourself. So that's part of it, is that phone call, that conversation. And also I think, you know, in the query, in a query bio, I always say it's really good to, you know, if you are a member of writers groups, if you attend writers conferences, if you've had critiques before, mention that in your bio, because that tells me, even if you don't have previous writing credits or whatnot, that you're really serious about your craft and you're working on it. And then the final thing I'd say, and this is just a subjective thing for me, but if I see an author has been like working on, like if someone tells me I've been working on this book for 10 years, that's not a good sign for me as an agent, because I want, like, what about the year after I sell this book? You know, I want you to do
another 10 years for the next one.
Right, exactly. And I think that it's also an important skill to be able to be like, I wrote this draft or I wrote this manuscript. It's not going to work. I got to move on to something else. Like, that's a hard skill to learn, but it's really important in publishing. So, you know, someone who has said to, you know, someone who says to me like, you know, I've queried a dozen novels, but none of them have sold yet, but I think this is the best one I've ever done. That person to me is a more exciting prospect, because they keep working it, keep learning, keep coming back. They're persistent. Okay. Like that.
Good to know.
Good to know.
So on a note of agent writer, so as an agent, what do you think would be your biggest piece of advice to an author? And as an author, what would be your biggest piece of advice to the world?
So as an agent, my biggest piece of advice to an author, I think it depends on where you are in your writer journey. But I think that the best piece of advice I can give to writers who want to be traditionally published and want some degree of fame for their writing, let's say, or want to be widely read, is think about the books that you create as gifts for someone else. I think that we learn to write and we start writing because it's something that brings us pleasure, and that's great. And hopefully that pleasure never goes away. But every successful writer, I think, makes a transition from writing for their own internal voice to I'm crafting something like I would a cake that I'm going to present to you. And you open it and you're like, oh my God, it's my favorite flavor. And like you cut it open, you're like, and there's ice cream inside. Like I know.
Wrinkles.
I know. I was thinking of you when I put that there. You know, it's like that kind of experience. And when you're thinking that way, that means your reader is always in your mind. You're thinking about what is their experience of this scene, of this word, of this chapter. And it kind of gets back to that idea of like me trying to write radio dramas that my friends would laugh at. Like I'm always thinking about how is this going to land with them, you know? And when I was writing Dimension Y for Molly, it was always like, I want to make her laugh, but I want to end every chapter with a reason that she should be excited for me to do this again tomorrow, you know? And that helped me get through, you know, my first middle grade draft and my first draft of a book in years that I had written at the time. So that thinking I find really helpful. And then what advice would I give as an author? That's a good one. I think it would sort of be the same, you know, because I think that when you think about your writing or a novel that you're making as a gift for somebody else, it also reminds you that you are not your book. And I think that feeling of I am my book, I am my writing, it is a perfect reflection of my insides. That's what makes criticism and rejection so especially painful when it comes to, you know, writing or art or music or any kind of stuff. Is we stop seeing it as a thing we made and we see it as like, look, I took a picture of me inside and I showed it to you and you don't like it. That's bad. No, it's not.
Why'd you say
It's not you that's bad, you know, or it's not you that didn't work. It's your execution. Your tools need refining. Your skills need refining, not your creative vision. So, yeah, that would be the advice that I would give.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we write, you know, mystery thriller, and I'm literally like the biggest scaredy cat in the whole wide world. So I don't. So it's not my insides whatsoever. I am scared to watch anything scary. So
no, but how long we've been friends? 15 years. And she still hasn't watched a scary movie with me, and it's gonna happen.
I mean, someday, you know, maybe we'll take the book bar and follow us to like a haunted house or whatever. But
oh yes, it's happening.
I will be terrified.
Off topic. But if you want to get her to watch scary movies and you guys like the occasional YouTube channel, I recommend The Kill Count, because they're like funny reviews of scary movies and they make scary movies not scary.
Okay.
Because I also
totally. It's if I could watch it. I mean, I can watch it on mute. You know, it's just I don't know.
Where's the fun?
I'm a Hallmark Christmas movie kind of girl.
It is, and every time we watch, I'm like, I just want to kill everybody.
We're 100% opposite in every single way. But the thing is about writing thriller is that I'm in control, and the thing about watching a thriller is that I'm not in control. So as long as I can stay in control of, you know, things of my world, then I'm good. We're all good.
I need you to relinquish control and just one haunted house.
I did one time, and I fell and hurt my leg, and then the scary clown tried to talk to me. It was not okay.
What's his name? Are you okay? Do you need help getting up?
And I'm like, get away! Because they scared me so much, I jumped back, and there's this wood piece that stuck out, and I cut my leg, and my whole group left me. This
has stuck with her for 20 years.
Very traumatic.
Really scarred by that moment. So, you have we have another.
I have a few more. Okay. So, do you ever participate in any of like the Twitter events or PitMad or anything like that?
Sure. Yeah. So the biggest one for me over the years has been DV Pit. I've met a few of my clients through there. I will also do PitMad and whatnot. So those hashtag-based Twitter pitch contests I found to be really helpful in finding stuff and whatnot. Usually what happens is there will be a dozen or more pitches that I think are really cool. And then sort of like the query inbox, that might come down to like one full request or two full requests. Or if I ask for fulls, I might get really invested in one or two of the ones that are sent. So yeah, I absolutely do participate in those. Even though my Twitter attendance is generally spotty these days, I show up for the pitch contests.
Gotcha.
Well, and for our people, there is one coming up. Well, there's the Pitch Wars that's coming up. I don't know if you're part of the showcase, but PitMad is going to be on March 4th. So we will put that in our description on the video for everybody to be able to click on that.
Peeps. Also, when it comes to requesting fulls, like, do you actually read the whole thing? I mean, I would assume, my assumption is that you start reading it, and if like you're like, this is not going where I want it, like you stop, and you're just like, no, this is.
Yeah.
Or do you don't plow on through and be like, maybe it's going somewhere.
I wouldn't do it.
I'm not a completionist at all, and I'm the same way with published stuff. Like if a published book loses me, I'm just like, life is too short, and forget it. I with requested manuscripts, it's the same way. I think if it starts to fall apart or if it starts to lose me, and it depends because I don't expect a manuscript to be perfect when I'm reading it. Like I expect that I'm going to do some work with the author and that we're going to polish it up and maybe tighten some stuff or whatnot. But I think there's a distinction between the sorts of problems that I can fix in a revise or two with an author versus problems that feel a little bit too systemic for me to feel like would be able to work on it quickly enough together that I could get it out on submission. So it really depends. But sometimes what happens is, if I'll start reading something and a few chapters in, it still really got me. I'll have this anxiety of like, oh God, stay good, please stay good. Like don't turn dull. Like, yeah. And that does happen sometimes, unfortunately, because writing books is really, really hard. But
middle.
Yeah. So
the middle. The middle.
Middles are hard. Yeah.
Should we play a game? Should we close?
Yes, let's play a game. Let's play a game. So, yeah. So we're going to ask you a few questions, and you have to come up with like, Christy already did this one.
Sorry, I stole it.
So you have to come up with the answers super quick. So whatever comes to your mind.
Immediately, like first thing.
All right. So
right,
first
ready?
one.
Get loose.
I'm ready.
Toilet paper, over or under?
Over.
Of course. Very good.
The proper way. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, do you ever fix it at anybody's house?
Yes. Yeah, I do. Or if I don't, I will quietly judge them further.
Yes, for sure.
Judgy face.
All right.
What's the funniest joke you know by heart?
I don't know many jokes by heart. I will say favorite joke is, how far can a dog run into the woods? Halfway, because the other half he's running out.
I don't get it.
You don't get it?
I don't get it. Sorry.
She's cute.
Sorry. It's funny. It's really funny.
Yeah. Professional funny writer over here. Yeah.
I got it.
She'll tell me later. I will laugh, I promise. How many chickens would it take to kill an elephant?
1, if it's moving fast enough.
That's true. I was going for 20.
I was going to have them attack it.
I mean, if you think about like a chicken fired out of like a high velocity cannon.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm thinking like a chicken projectile.
Right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Projectile chicken. Okay.
So this next one is you're actually just solving a debate that I have with my husband. So be careful with your answer. This debate has gone on for years. So,
all right.
Should kids or people be allowed to mix Play-Doh?
Like the colors.
The colors. Come on, John, I'm counting on you.
You're going to ruin your Play-Doh. I don't think so.
Thank you. That's how I feel.
It's creative.
The turn into that like green, kind of
not
pale green.
It's like what's that sand? Whatever it's called, and it comes in all these different. Yeah, it comes in all these different colors, and then you like mix them all together, and then you have like not a color. You have nothing. Exactly.
I was just watching Great British Bake Off, and someone like took all this multicolored fondant and was trying to make like a tie-dye effect, and I said it's going to be just like Play-Doh, and it was, and she got kicked off. I stand by it.
But she got kicked off. Do you hear that? She got kicked off. She didn't win.
I allow my daughter to mix Play-Doh, and it's just caused such an uproar. So, all right.
I'm sorry.
3 for him, 0 for me.
You don't win. You don't win those. Okay. What is the most ridiculous fact that you know?
The thing that immediately jumped into my mind is so gross that I don't know if I can share it. I'll say this instead. If you're interested, look up facts about koala bears, because they're the worst animal ever conceived. They're so gross. They're so gross and useless. They eat. Koala bears are constantly under the influence because of the food that they eat.
Bamboo gives them a high?
Yeah, they're like, I think that they're always stoned, and I don't even want to say it on camera. It's so gross, but that is the most ridiculous.
Oh dear.
The most ridiculous stuff I know about koala bears.
Yeah,
in
it
general.
doesn't. Koala is thought to mean no drink. That's about as. Okay, we're going to do some research on that one.
Facts about koalas. Gross facts about koalas.
I'm going to write a picture book on gross koalas now. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, that'll sell out. Agent Brain. What is something you wish you could see in your inbox right now?
Right now. Right this second.
Like right now. And what?
I think I would love to see a like middle grade novel about a first or second generation kid like working in their family's business. So something that's kind of like Front Desk, if you're familiar with that book. I would love to see something like that on the middle grade space. Maybe with a bit of fantasy or sort of fantastical magic thrown in. But definitely like kids working in small businesses. I'm fascinated by that, and I'd like to kind of explore that story space a little bit.
So slave labor. No, just kidding.
Yeah, child labor.
Child labor.
For children. By children.
For children. Tell them it's okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That'll work.
I think that's all our questions.
And then I have all of our questions have come from mostly other people, but I have a personal one because it's not about us. But one of the things that we struggle with, because we are co-writers, we have written together for years, 10 plus years. We have a co-writer contract together. Is that daunting to an agent if you see like
2 versus 1?
Right, because I know for example, we talked with the Laceras, and that's like a married couple. So technically, what if something happened between them? Like I could see a fear, not a fear, but like a kind of hesitation by an agent
if we ever broke up.
Right. If they're like, why would I want to sign, like the two, now I've got 2 brains that I've got to deal with. Now I've got, 2 personalities, blah, blah,
2 opinions.
Yeah. So is that potentially daunting?
Not for me personally. I mean, I've worked with a lot of, Courtney Alameda and Valin Mayatani wrote 7 Deadly Shadows together. And I actually, Christian Heidecker came to me as a writing duo with Valin. So Christian went on to write Scary Stories for Young Foxes, which got the Newbery honor. So he writes on his own. Valin wrote with Courtney instead. Kat Helgeson and Hannah Moskowitz were a writing pair that I represented at one time. So I've worked with a lot of duos. So no, it doesn't concern me. I mean, you guys start out by saying you have a co-author contract, and I think putting on that agent grade, I think that's the only not only, but that's a necessary step to kind of look out for what might happen if you do break up, right? But if you guys come to me together, and you're a co-writing duo and you seem to like that, then I trust that you work well together, So no, that doesn't concern me. I've heard other agents be a little bit warier because maybe they've had rougher experiences in that space. But I think as long as everything is on paper that should be, and you have a plan for what happens if someone is no longer part of the writing group or it dissolves, then no, that doesn't concern me as an agent at all. In fact, there's something kind of fun about like a dynamic like this. You know what I mean? I think that it can be. I've really enjoyed. Yeah. Well, you guys are just fun people, but I think also, I've had really positive experiences collaborating with writer teams. And I do a lot of IP. I develop, intellectual property, and I work with people who do, and that's often a very collaborative, like multi-brain kind of environment, where a bunch of people are creating together. And I really enjoy that. So for me personally, I think that's just fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I always thought it was interesting that, like, screenwriters and everything. I mean, like, it is always like
team.
A bunch of people writing together, and then it's like novels is like, no, you're going to be solo. You do it by yourself.
Well, now we know.
Yeah. I mean, I think, that's one of the reasons I really enjoy sort of the IP process where, someone maybe, or a team of someone's comes up with a concept, maybe another writer or writers kind of put the meat on the bones, kind of flesh it out and whatnot. I think it's a nice way to create, and, maybe, I think as an agent, I might have a bunch of really commercial ideas, or a commercial sensibility that someone who's been, practicing their voice for the past 10 years might not. And being able to combine, a commercial idea with a great writer, brain can be a really powerful combination. So yeah, I think collaboration of all kind is a really positive thing.
Yeah, I know that's definitely helped with us, just because, she's kind of the fast-paced writer, gets all the bones out there, and then I come through and, like,
very detailed.
I'm like, how does this happen? She was sitting over here, and now she's over here. Like, how did she get there? Like,
she just did.
I mean, she went
But
through a portal. She went through a portal.
She did. I mean, it could happen.
But yeah,
I think the only thing that would break us up is the haunted house. I do.
I mean,
that would be the last.
There you go.
That would be
scary.
That's the straw that breaks the camel's
If
back.
If she left
and
me.
I would.
As soon as we
I'm
came,
that friend.
Yeah, as soon as we came to that chainsaw guy at the end, we would bolt.
Yeah, I'm out. It's the only thing that scares me. The whole time I'm laughing, but that
I would cower.
Chainsaw, I'm done.
I would cower and cry.
Well, thank you, Mr. John Cusick.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you
for having.
This was so fun.
Letting us into your world a little bit. And now, is the sequel titled the same, and it's just sequel?
You said it was the revenge of the sequel?
Revenge of the sequel. And it's not just a cute name. There is actually a sequel that gets revenge in the next book.
I will return.
So yeah.
Super fun book. Thank you so much for giving this to the world, because I know you did too.
Yeah.
Laughed out loud several times. And what a beautiful gift to give to your wife. You guys seem like you have such a special relationship, and give her all of our love as well. So thank you so much.
You guys enjoy your island life. Yes. You'll be back in New York in a year though, right? Is that the plan?
Yeah. 2022. We will be back in the city. I don't know where exactly, but getting back to more normal work schedule. But between now and then, yes, we'll be on our secret tropical island.
Well, enjoy every second of it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so
guys.
much. You guys have a good rest of the weekend.
Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye. All right.
Oh, John Cusick, thank you again. I cannot say enough about it.
That was awesome. So much good information and thoughtful information.
Yes.
And this book was hilarious. If you have not read it, please read it.
You have to pick it up. You have to pick it up. And if you can listen to it, again.
I know. I feel like I need to listen to it now.
That British accent, it's so fun. But we will have all the information on where to pick up his book in the details. So be sure to click on the links to be able to buy or listen to a copy of his book. We'll also have a link to his YouTube trailer, as well as Folio Literary. He is the vice president in Folio Junior, which is kids' books. Mm-hmm. So we'll have that information.
And didn't he also do a reading?
He did.
A snippet.
Yes, there's a reading on his Agent Brain, Writer Brain.
Yes, that. For next month, February, we actually are not going to
We're taking
have
a break.
anybody. I know.
We actually have a work of our own.
We're trying to finish up a work of our own. So we need to focus on that. But we have in March.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Yes, grab the book.
Oh, I'm
We
so
have
excited.
Kit
Frick. Love
I
her.
Killed Zoe Spanos.
Yes. And I first read her with See All the Stars, of which I connected to. So I'm very excited for this interview. So that is in March. So details coming soon.
Yes. So you won't hear from us very much. I mean, you'll hear from us. We'll be on Twitter. But we won't have a live in February. So you guys can just read all your romance novels on your own.
And get ready for PitMad in March 4th. So you can take February to write your pitches.
Get your pitches ready. And we will see you again in March.
All right.
So take care.
Thank you.
Bye.